All right, so even as China celebrates its 70th anniversary, Hong Kong, on the other hand, which is now a part of Chinese special administered territory, continues to be in a lockdown on the eve of the 70th National Day. Hundreds of protesters gathered near the Victoria Harbour and formed a human chain. They used green frog soft toys, which have recently come to symbolize the summer of protests. And in Hong Kong's Won Chai district, pro-democracy activists had a scuffle with the police that ended with multiple arrests being made. Despite Hong Kong's police warning to the protesters, there were demonstrations across the city. The posters calling October 1st a day of grief also popped up across the city. Now, the Chinese government has been trying very hard to ensure that the protests do not overshadow its National Day celebrations. The protesters, on the other hand, are using the National Day to propel their calls for greater democracy. Rail operators have also closed down certain metro stations due to the fear of a confrontation. And some shopping malls have also announced their closure for the day as well. And a flag-raising ceremony was conducted even as the city remains in a complete lockdown, with violence between the protesters and the police reaching an alarming level. And President Xi Jinping, in his National Day address, has called for the preservation of the one country, two systems arrangement and has said that Hong Kong and Macau will develop and will progress along with the mainland. And also, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar met with his U.S. counterpart, the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, in Washington today, in what was a record meeting in the last 4 months between the two top diplomats. And this meeting, of course, comes as India and Washington are now in an advanced stage of trade discussions. One was, of course, hoping that there would be some sort of a trade deal that would be announced when Prime Minister Modi was, of course, at the UNGA, and on the sidelines of the UNGA there was a bilateral meeting. But that, of course, did not happen. Now, the trade differences are being hammered out between the two foreign ministers of these two nations. And besides a possible trade deal, we are also looking at the Indo-Pacific relations, counter-terrorism and Afghanistan, which remains the top focus during this meeting. Now, S. Jaishankar is on a 3-day visit to Washington, where he's also scheduled to meet with the newly appointed U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper. And the meeting comes just 2 days after India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, of course, concluded his week-long high-profile U.S. visit. The visit, as most claim, has now helped bring India and the United States more closer than ever before in the past. And both U.S. President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi have endorsed each other's leadership during the mega Indian diaspora event, where Donald Trump also turned up to share the stage with the Indian Prime Minister. And the event, of course, was called Howdy Modi, and it was held in Houston in Texas, which saw a record participation of almost about 60,000 Indian Americans, that is, people of Indian origin who hold an American passport. And Prime Minister Modi, of course, endorsed Donald Trump and also went on to state, Ab ki baar Trump Sarkar, endorsing him for the next year's election as well. Now, both sides are working on a trade agreement, with Trade Minister Piyush Goyal meeting with his U.S. counterpart last week in New York. There are also talks about both sides working on U.S. President Donald Trump's first India visit later this year.